Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. We are the Savvy Spiritual Sisters, the Yogi, the Mystic, and the Priestess. And we engage in rich discussion on life, spirituality, and wellness from our unique perspectives. My name is Nina, and I'm the Yogi.
My name is Amber, and I'm the Mystic.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm the Priestess.
And so today we are going to be discussing integrity. And so I believe it was our priestess, Lisa, her idea for integrity. So Lisa, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so it seems to me that integrity has been coming up a lot more over the last few years, and I think even more so since the presidential election. And then just recently, I've just, as I survey what's going on in my life and the lives of others around me, it's come up in a real personal way. So while whatever's going on in society and in the macrocosm always comes down to the personal, and so for me personally, I found that I had to step away from something I've been involved in for a couple of decades. It's a community that I have served as priestess, and I became aware of some things that were going on that I wasn't really in alignment with. But then as I dug deeper within myself, I found that some things that had sort of just been a little uncomfortable or wasn't sure how to sort of articulate within myself what was bothering me, I was able to dig deeper and bring it to my conscious awareness and make a more logical and analytical understanding of how certain practices were not in alignment with who I want to be and how I aspire to be my best self. And for me, that really meant that in order to be in my own integrity, I would not be able to continue and to be complicit with these practices. So I had to take a step back and just really do more, and it's going to be a process, like it's already started, but I'll do a lot more sort of inner searching so that I can make sure that whatever happens going forward and who I choose to be and how I choose to serve is in alignment with my highest integrity.
Great. Amber, what about you? What do you have to say about integrity?
Integrity. Well, I think on the planet today, you guys, this is a time of great revelation. First, I want to point out that I grew up very rural in Southern Virginia and very much steeped in a Christian tradition. And my grandfather was sort of what you'd call a holy roller, right? And I feel him winking at me right now as I say that. And what I mean by that is he had a deep love of sort of biblical text. And I bring this to the conversation because his favorite book was Revelation. And one of the things that I really, when he would tell some of the stories, my ears as a kid would just hear it from things would be revealed. That there was a point coming that humanity was going to have to confront themselves. What do they believe? What is in alignment with who they want to be? That there was going to be a great stock taking stock in the self. And I feel like that's sort of what's happening on the planet, a return to a sense of self-responsibility, of stock taking. Does this suit me, or is it costing me from an integrity standpoint? Is this resonating with who I want to be? It's everything Lisa just said. And it will come with a lot of upheaval for people. Suddenly they're going to find, and we see this in ascension and consciousness on the planet in terms of that content that's all out on the internet. You're going to see people who are leaving groups, leaving relationships, leaving jobs that are out of integrity for them. It's like a time, and it's that great stock taking about who am I going to be, who do I mean to be this lifetime. It's breaking the chain or frequency or the resonance of who do you want me to be? Whether it's an institution, whether it is a religion, whether it is education, whether it is, I'm supposed to have 2.3 children and live in a house that looks like that or drive this kind of car. I mean, down to the granular. So it doesn't surprise me, Lisa, for you to be running into that. I definitely, I look for and feel for integrity like right off the bat in all of my relationships now. I mean, it's like one of the first things that I almost can smell it. And I know you guys can too. I can tell, because integrity and authenticity, usually they go really, they're interwoven, right? So I'm aware that at this stage of my life, that in everything I do, I feel for the vibe of integrity. Is this lining up with who I know myself to be? From my inner life out. Nina, how does integrity kind of show up for you, and what does all this story and my viewpoint sort of bring up for you?
Well, I mean, it's become a bigger thing for me, or not necessarily bigger, but more conscious thing for me, especially in the last few years, related to relationships, related to work, how I work, the process that I work with for myself, how I engage with clients, customers. And from the yoga perspective, the first thing I thought of where integrity was concerned, because integrity basically means being honest with yourself and others, being unified in a way, having some sort of strong moral principles. And if you look at that and the definition of yoga, so yoga means union or to yoke. And it's almost like they're interchangeable words. Okay, yoga is living, being in integrity. And if you want to drill that down even more and take it down to one of the limbs of yoga. So we know yoga is more than just asana, the physical practice. If we take it down to the yamas of yoga, which is the first limb of yoga, which are our moral principles, our ethical ways of living. And then we drill down into one of those, satya, which is truthfulness and being truthful. And I look at that as being truthful with others, more so being truthful and honest with myself. And so when throughout the ages of my yoga practice, over the course of the last 20 years, I have found different times where I was like, this doesn't feel right to me, and I'm not going to do it as a teacher. I had a teacher tell me one time, we were discussing class and starting class, and I mentioned something about how often I'll start students on their back. And she was like, never start students on their back. And I'm like, why not? And it sets the energy low or something like that. And I'm like, but if I feel like that's what they need, then I'm going to be honest with myself and them, be in integrity, and give them what they need. Not what they think they want, not what another teacher or guru says I need to do, not what the studio says I'm supposed to do, but what I feel they need. And that's how I've always taught yoga. And then from if you look at it from a physical perspective, if you're being in alignment, if being in integrity is being in alignment, then we need to look at the physical aspect of much of yoga. Asana is about being in alignment in some way or another from a safety perspective. If people can't be in alignment, then I'm not going to teach that. So, there was a time where it's like you had to do headstand at the end of class. And I'm like,
I remember that time.
No, we're not going to do that because everybody in this class can't be in proper alignment to hold that, and they're going to get hurt. Yeah. So that's how I see it, especially from a yoga perspective, and how to see them both as being basically the same thing. Integrity is yoga. Integrity is the fruit of yoga. They're both practices that put us into alignment with bigger energy, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two things that came up from what you said, and that I sort of want to point out to the people who are going to tune into this conversation with us, who are going to watch or listen to this. The first one is, and I have a question for you, Lisa, because it relates to this. First of all, isn't it the case, you guys, that any kind of inner practice, spiritual practice, consciousness practices, such that we're all involved with in our daily lives, such that we teach in our daily lives, isn't it true that it's tricky? You think you are coming, for example, Mina, you think you're coming to a yoga 101 type class, right? You think you just want to relax some and use yoga to go kind of within and become more relaxed, lower your blood pressure. Your primary care says you need some yoga. Okay. Isn't it really tricky? Because when you begin to move in what is an ancient and holy way, sacred art way, it sends silent signals to the psyche of the person, and it begins to change you, bring you into. I'm getting goosebumps. I get goosebumps just saying that. And then, therefore, the revelation, it's pulling you into alignment, which will include integrity, because it's the natural condition of the human psyche to be in integrity. That's part of alignment. Isn't it true that it's almost like, of course your life is going to change when you start physically and moving in those ways and coming into alignment, your outer world is going to change. So when I turn to Lisa now, am I on to something there?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So when I turn to Lisa, to get back to her original story, because what I know about you, Lisa, is the change that you're making in that group environment as a priestess. There is, when I'm outside looking in, I see that there is a lot of loss that happens.
I think there is going to be a certain amount of loss, because this is all just happening. And so, I think it's going to take a while for all the fallout to sort of go through, and it's going to be a process. And I was concerned about losing some relationships. And at the same time, those relationships are important to me. So I made sure to reach out and to, as much as possible, maintain those relationships and those connections by personal contact and explaining my point of view and everything. Because I feel that this new perspective that I've gained is a real crucial point to how not just myself, but that this group and this community gets to we get to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And, and I see how it's happening, in the big picture, but it was just a matter of time before these kinds of things came through to illuminate, hey, we've got to step our game up. We got to own our shit. We got to look at our personal stuff. We got to look at how it's showing up, in community and in organizing. And then we have to up level and decide where we stand personally, and also how we want to implement structures and systems and guidelines that help to keep everybody in alignment with this new understanding and perspective. This group may not exactly be ready to hear all of what I have to say,
right.
and that's okay. I'm hoping that they'll come back around, and I've made the offer that I will do that. But at the same time, I see that it's a really huge opportunity, and every time I keep checking in and going, could I have done that different or better, or how could I be? I am so affirmed that I've done the right thing, I've made the best decision, and that I I wouldn't feel good or right if I had continued in the direction things were headed and just doing the same old that I have done for a long time. And if I'm going to dedicate myself to helping others work through their stuff, then I have to hold myself to a higher standard. And it's time for that. And I understand that partially the way I was able to view this, and have a new perspective was because I'm understanding the astrology right now and how energetically that's showing up. So this is the story of Pluto and Saturn conjunct in Capricorn. Capricorn is an earth sign, so it's partially about the earth and the environment. It's also how we work. It's our relationships to structure and power and authority. So those themes are really strong, but Saturn is very much about structure and karma and how we do things, and even more about authority and patriarchy. And then Pluto is about the life, death, and rebirth, and how we bring up the shadow and the darker stuff, and we look at it and we go, I can't do this anymore, or that's not sustainable, or this is not what's going to move us forward as a society and help heal ourselves and the planet. So when I realized from that perspective that that's part of what was going on, and that I understand part of the alchemy of this process is a lot more about what we have to let go of and get rid of first, so that we can be more in alignment, so we can be more in integrity, so we can create the new foundations and the new structures.
So for people that don't know, explain what conjunct means and how long this energetic influence is going to be around.
Okay, so first off, you should know that Saturn and Pluto are kind of heavy hitters in the solar system. Pluto is more of an outer planet, so outer planets affect us more on the micro or the macrocosm and like societal level, but still on a personal level. And then Saturn is a more personal planet, so it's got a lot more to do with how we're doing our own stuff. When they're conjunct, it means they're right on top of each other. They're at the same point in the sky. And this is going on for 2 years. So this is, and it's actually some of the biggest astrology of our lifetimes. The last time the two of them were conjunct like this in Capricorn was during the American Revolution. And so if you think about what a big deal that was, like we're standing at the threshold of that kind of change. I got the chills too. But then here's the other piece that makes it even more powerful. This time we are also seeing these two not just conjunct each other, but also conjunct and sitting on the south node of fate. It's the south node of the moon. This is about karma. It is about release and letting go. It is about what's not working anymore. So it's like compounds this energy. And then let's like check in a little bit further with that. Yesterday, Pluto it stopped to go backwards, retrograde. On Monday, Saturn will do the same. And so while they're going to go backwards, they're going to stay in this really close conjunct relationship, not just with each other, but also with this south node for about the next 6 months or so. So we're doing a lot of hardcore work on understanding what's not working.
Wow.
Awesome.
So I guess at this point in our conversation, because we really do try to stick to 30 minutes, I'm interested from you, Nina. Well, first of all, back to the point about all that we let go of, and the reason why I mentioned grief, and the emotion of the changes. Now, see, all three of us are pretty seasoned women, mature in business, mature in healing arts, as teachers, etc. And so we ride these shifts and waves. I mean, I'm not perfect. Lord knows I'm in the floor occasionally still. And things take us by surprise, right? And you're going to ride this important change in your priestess life beautifully, as you just described, right? But for the people who are going to take this conversation to heart and be looking for some clues, they're going to need to know how do I ride out? You know, what kind of yoga movement can I incorporate to ride out this cosmologic time, this procession of planetary movements and so forth, as beautifully described by you, Lisa. They're going to want some clues from here on out in the conversation, I think, about, well, what do I do when all this shit's hitting the fan? How do I maintain my personal integrity? Literally, integrity means integration of self.
And wholeness.
And that wholeness.
Yeah, wholeness.
While we're going through, and we said, what did you say? 6 months, 2 years? What was that?
So this is a 2-year process. The retrograde is 6 months. So like we'll come back around next year and there'll be another retrograde. But this whole thing is about a 2-year or so process.
Okay, so my challenge to us now for the rest of the conversation is to turn it into, now what do we as typically who's tuning into this are what I would call service to others souls, people who are fairly well attuned, fairly well along somewhere in some forms and bits and pieces of spiritual practice that they've cobbled together, right? So that said, Nina, what would you like to see us doing with our bodies and psyches from that yogini perspective?
Sure. So I think any kind of yoga that resonates with you, physical yoga. So if it feels good and right to go do a power class, a vinyasa class, those movements, that breath, what you're doing is going to help you ride this out, whether you realize it or not, in a way that that works for you. If it doesn't feel right, so if you go into a power yoga class and you can't do half of it, then you are already out of alignment and not being in integrity. And that's when you need to ask yourself, okay, maybe it's okay to go take a gentle class, a gentle yoga class. It's going to do the same thing, just in a different way. Specifically to practice satya, or that truthfulness, in a physical way, I take that as throat chakra. So to stimulate this 5th energy center at our throat, to speak and hold our truth, to acknowledge our truth in ourselves. And so that's going to be things like chanting. So just oming is fine for that. It'll be any sort of, you could do a bridge pose, anything where the back of your neck is in contact with the floor and the ground. If shoulder stand is something that makes you feel good, then shoulder stand works. And there's lots of options you can take to actually not do shoulder stand, but still get that throat energy stimulated. Fish pose, the opposite. Yeah. And then there's a mudra, Kali mudra, which is this, that empowers us to it empowers us to be truthful, to connect with our own truth. And so maybe just holding this during meditation is a way to do that. But I think when you go to a class, if anything feels off, if it doesn't feel right, if you don't feel strong enough, and you have to really pay attention, because people will think, oh, I need to go do power today, when it's really like, no, I need to really just go in Shavasana. I think people really need to pay attention, open that throat chakra, and then ask, what do I need today? And just go deep and listen, instead of letting the ego or the mind say, oh, I've got to go sweat it out, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, all of it is very, very good advice there, Lisa. Nina, I like that, and I like this. And I'm reminded of the movies. What was it? What was the movie? Charlie's Angels and his posters. It's so interesting how revealing. It's like hidden in plain sight. The signs, the signals that are all around us for helping us align even unconsciously, calling us to align, right?
Yeah.
All right, Lisa, what is your take on what would you like to see people doing in this phase? I mean, you said the revolution, energetics, you guys, of the American Revolution.
Yeah. Well, so what I've been doing, and I even devised an oracle and tarot card reading around all of this. But one of the questions I think that's worth like checking in and asking oneself over and over and over again is, how can I be more in my integrity? And I like that wording. You could also even ask, how am I not in my integrity? But I like a more positive wording for the question, because your subconscious will turn that over, and it will bring up answers to you and reveal things. Another thing that I think about, which was part of this process for me, is every time I'm sort of thinking about pointing a finger, we just did this, but every time I'm sort of pointing a finger, I know to every time I've got to look back around and point the finger here and go, okay, if they're doing something that I don't like, or that's pissed me off, or that, it doesn't feel good to me, I have to look inside myself and find where that same energy lies, or where I might be perpetrating the same kind of thing. So those are two important practices for me. And I also want to just read this, because I keep going back to this again and again. And it's a quote from Brene Brown from her book, Braving the Wilderness. She says, integrity is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them. So it really is living in a way that, you're not doing what's easy, you're doing what's right and what's just, and you're not just like, oh, well, that's easy and that's fun and that's what I want to do. You're like, wait a minute, if I'm in my integrity, I'm going to do things a certain way, and I'm going to stay true to that and true to myself. And so to me, staying true to oneself really trumps a lot of other things in life.
Yeah, you cultivated, you gardened integrity and authenticity. And I think that's true for both of you. I know that. It's certainly true for me that I literally, it's painful when I'm out of alignment. I know immediately when I have misspoken, misthought of, even to myself. If I have thoughts that I think are out of integrity, I point back to myself, and I get that crap straight. I get it straight pretty quick. I would rather, and you do have the ability in terms of thoughts and emotions. And so from my end, from a mystical viewpoint, which is really an energetic story, I would say mind your thoughts and your words. And I don't just mean the words that people can hear you say. I even mean the ones on the inside, and the ones that you're thinking of others and thinking about yourself. To make sure you're staying in integrity with yourself while nobody's looking. I think that as more of us, as it's becoming revealed, and I can't help but make the parallel. I didn't know that the conjunction of those planets and that alignment was such. The only last time was the American Revolution. This is a revolution of human consciousness that's going on our planet. So I get chills just say, oh, here come the chills again. And I get what's called, as you do too, it's called the chills of truth. When truth is being spoken, I get all kinds of goosebumps. So I think that that's an incredible, I'm glad, putting those two together is really powerful for me. Managing our thoughts, managing our emotions, staying in integrity. And when you fall out of integrity, being willing to say, oops, I think I blotted myself out here. Being willing to say, I love you. I love you. I'm sorry. Can you please forgive me? What is that? That ho'oponopono? I can't.
Ho'oponopono.
Like she said, the idea that we have to apply a lot of self-forgiveness when we're doing course correction for ourselves.
Exactly.
I think that's most of all. I do want to mention two things. I kind of like to do this with us as we do these conversations. I want to bring in an ascended master who is showing up for the conversation, who has been with us the entire time, and that is Saint Germain. So Saint Germain is all about, and Lisa, I think you and Nina referenced this. You certainly did, Lisa. This is a period of releasing karma, okay, and karmic ties, and releasing drama. No longer being willing to participate in drama. And so, what you can do with Saint Germain, any of our angelic realm and ascended master realm, all you have to do is invoke either the violet flame, which is the keeper of the violet flame, wear it like a cloak, put it around you, use the powerhouse of your imagination. We've been sold a bill of goods about that imagination is frivolous. So bring the violet flame around you when you're feeling heavy, feeling a lot of transition, and feeling overwhelmed. The other thing is a rock. There's a lot of people who come to these conversations who like their rocks and stones and so forth, right? So zircon came to the conversation today. And what's beautiful about zircon is it is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. The planet's loaded with zircon. And this is saying that if you're listening to this conversation on replay or seeing us, life change is now here for you. There is some big stuff going on in your life, and these folks were just talking about that. The cool thing is that after the tears are over, after the grief and the suffering is over, and once you heal through that this is the promise of your birthright. You are going to begin to be a co-creator and manifester of the life that you really do want to have from the inside out. So it's all about focus, forgiveness, and self-determination. So that's interesting that this is what came forward for the conversation, and this is what we've really been talking about.
I love what you were saying about a revolution of spirit, because like what I was thinking is that this time frame is a revolution of integrity, and that we get to be the revolutionaries, and it's got to start with us, right? We know that we have to be the change, so we start here, and then and then it ripples out, in all the ways, and everybody's doing this work, however conscious they are or not of it. So drawing people's attention and awareness to, hey, this is what's happening right here, and it's real. And then when you can take that lens and look at what's going on in life and in different situations, I think it lends a lot more clarity. Oh, okay, maybe I'm not fully in my integrity here. Or if I'm going to navigate this like crazy situation, I'm going to make sure to do that with integrity and do it right, because then you don't have to keep going back over it. You get the lesson.
Yeah. And integrity on the vibratory resonance chart, when you take a look at words and their resonances, their measurable frequencies,
yes,
integrity is incredibly high. It's vibratory resonance in terms of hertz. I would have to look up where it is and where it hits us on the human spinal column, which is our nervous system, which actually has threads in our energetic body and into the unseen. So when you start ringing the bell of Satya, watch out. You're going to get reverb from the unseen. It's a signal to the unseen that says she's ready. So I got goosebumps just saying that too. I think I got a lot of goosebumps with us today. I love you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, you know, as always, I feel like when the three of us get together, like, I mean, we could go on talking all day, all
We
afternoon
really
about
could.
this,
Yeah.
and include like some coffee or a drink or something for like,
Yeah.
you know, so, but I thank you. I thank you for wanting to talk about this because it's just been such a really you know, hardcore prevalent theme for me personally right now. And I'll be curious to see once we leave this conversation how these things might come up even more. So, you know, let me know.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I think that's it for today. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with a great topic related to Mother's Day. But for now, we are the Savvy Spiritual Sisters. I'm the Yogi.
I'm the mystic.
And I'm the priestess.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Love you. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was awesome.
Is that